So who has more pressure to win this season? Georgia's Kirby Smart, who's not won a national championship yet as a head coach, or Nick Saban, who's won quite a few, but not so many lately? It's a good question. We're going to talk about it right now. Stick with me to the end. Dean Legge from Dog Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. These two are supposed to play each other this season, particularly in the middle of September. We'll see how that goes. But one way or the other, when this season commences, Alabama and Georgia will play in Tuscaloosa for the first time since 2007. That's some time. And over that time period, the last 12 to 13 years, Alabama has established itself as the premier program in college football. Fast forward a few years to when Kirby Smart took over Georgia in 2016. The two teams meet a season later for the national championship. Alabama with a miracle throw from Tua Tagovailoa to win the national championship, and that's the last time Alabama has won it, which is completely different than the beginning of the decade when the Tide won, like 3 out of 5 or something like that. So both schools really are desperate to get done what their fans want, which is to win it all. The question is, who's got more pressure? Kirby has only been a head coach 4 full seasons. This will be his 5th, and he's not won the national championship. What's so full of pressure in Athens is that the program hasn't won the national championship in 40 years. That's a long time for a program to be as good as Georgia's been and not won it. I mean, is there a program that's better than Georgia? Is there a program that's been at this as long as Georgia and not won it? I mean, in that time period? No, there's been a lot of programs that are just not nearly as good as Georgia over that time. BYU, Georgia Tech, Auburn, who have won national championships. So Colorado, there's a long list of those. So Georgia really has had a struggle winning it all. They've come very close a couple of times in that 40 years, particularly these last 10. Or is the pressure more on Alabama to return to what was dominance? I mean, you think about Alabama from 2009 to 2012. So they win it in 2009 after vanquishing Florida in the SEC championship game. Lose to Auburn, who goes on to win the national championship in 2010, and then go on to reel off 2011 and 12 in back-to-back seasons, beating LSU to win it in 2011 after losing to the Tigers, and then beating Georgia on the way to just destroying Notre Dame, the 2012 championship. Obviously, in 13, it was Florida State beating Auburn, Florida State winning it in 14, and then Alabama again in 15. So the beginning of the decade was much better than the end for Alabama. The end of the decade was much better for Georgia than the beginning, although it wasn't that bad for the Dogs either. The pressure of the job at Alabama should not be undervalued. I mean, this is a program that fired Bill Curry after he won 10 games and lost to Auburn in the 80s. They have stabilized their coaching position clearly with Nick Saban. And it's a program that expects to win national championships in football. Can we really say that at Georgia, that they expect it? I think we can say that, but they haven't proven that they can do it. And that's really where I think if you talk about who has more pressure, I think it's got to be Alabama, because they're living in the SEC West with their arch nemesis Auburn, obviously LSU, who's coming off a national championship. That's different than Georgia, who has really had their way with the East lately in 3 seasons, losing 1 division game, which was to South Carolina last season. Kirby has elevated Georgia to where the discussion of the national championship comes every year, just like it does with Oklahoma. But just like Oklahoma, here these last 15 years or whatever it's been, the school hasn't won it. It's played for it, but it hasn't won it. I think the pressure at Alabama is noticeably higher, partly because of what Nick has built. But the pressure at Georgia for Kirby to win and win now doesn't matter who the quarterback is, doesn't matter who X is, the kicker, the athletic director, the president of the university. The pressure has ratcheted up because Kirby's been given everything that he wanted or asked for. I mean, I'm not aware of anything at this time where he's not gotten what he wanted. And that's how they'll win it. But I do think the pressure is more on at Alabama because Well, and this is a nice way of putting it, it's very serious, crazy people over there that expect to win it all every year. A lot of schools do that to themselves, but at Alabama it really is a disease. I mean that in a good and a bad way. If you want to know more about Georgia's 2020 season, click right there. I've got that for you locked and loaded. We'll see you over on Dog Post. Dean Legge making you a smarter Georgia fan.